the story of Peter walking on water. If y'all don't know the story, I'm going to read it. Starts off Matthew chapter 14, verse 22 through 32. It says, immediately he made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowds. After dismissing the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. Well into the night, he was there alone. Meanwhile, the boat was already some distance from land, battered by the waves because the land was against them. Jesus came toward them walking on the sea very early in the morning. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and they cried out in fear. Immediately Jesus spoke to them. "Have courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter answered him, "command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." And climbing out the boat, Peter started walking on the water and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the strength of the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out loud, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus reached out his hand, caught hold of him, and said to him, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they got into the boat, the wind ceased. Then those in the boat worshipped and said, "Truly, you are the Son of God." So the story starts out by sending his disciples to another area, and he tells the disciples to go in a boat and travel in the sea while Jesus was praying in the mountains. And so Jesus knew they were feared by the wind, by the storms, while they were sailing in the sea. It was around 3 a.m. in the morning, very early in the morning. And Jesus came. They saw a figure. The disciples saw a figure. They thought it was a ghost. They didn't think it was Jesus one bit, because they knew Jesus had sent them to sail. And they were terrified. It says, when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. It's a ghost. They thought it was a ghost, and they immediately cried out in fear. And that's when the figure said, "Have courage, it is I, don't be afraid." Jesus identified himself. And the only disciple out of the handful of disciples, Peter, walked out on the boat. Jesus told Peter to come. Peter had the most faith in the boat. And Jesus got out of the boat. Climbing out of the boat, Peter walked on water and came toward Jesus. And then Peter was focusing on Jesus. And he took his eyes off Jesus, and he was afraid of the wind. He was afraid of the storm. And he began sinking. He began sinking slowly and slowly until his last breath of air. Peter said, "Lord, save me." And immediately, Jesus caught a hold of him and saved him. He said, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" What is the lesson here? The lesson, one of my main points is, don't doubt faith in Jesus. Because no matter what you're going through, no matter what storm you're in, no matter how bad of the situation you're in, Jesus is with you. You can't doubt your faith for him. Even though none of the disciples chose to exit the boat except Peter, Peter still had the most faith, and Jesus still let him drown because he had that slight doubt of faith. Second point, keep your eyes on Jesus. When Peter first walked on water, his eyes was on Jesus, and then his mind was distracted on the wind, on the storm, and he began to sink. Jesus wants our eyes on him. He doesn't want our eyes on the evil things that are happening in the world. Jesus doesn't promise us a good life, a great life all the time, having what we want in life. No, there will be storms. There will be difficult situations. But no matter what, we will have Jesus. Keep your eyes on Jesus. You know, skiers, when they're skiing through the trees, they're focused on the path. If they're focused on the trees, they're probably going to hit them. Do not focus on the obstacles. Focus on the path. When you focus on the obstacles, you have a higher chance of crashing into the obstacles. And that's what Jesus wants you to do. He wants you to focus on Him. Ignore the obstacles. Ignore the temptation. Ignore the difficult situations. Even though you have difficult situations, you will still have Jesus. You will still have that peace. You will still have that hope. You will still have that joy that Jesus gives you when you seek Him. Amen.